So I'm Michael from Czech Republic, and I'm 24. I just finished international relations, my degree, and the main thing why I'm probably here is to talk about hitchhiking, which is something I'm doing for like last 6, 7 years, because I never had money really, and I always wanted to travel. Plus, I was interested in the situations in the various countries. So yeah, and I actually got to the hitchhiking by a really funny incident because I was in Slovenia and I need to get to the airport, but I had a flight at 6 in the morning and it was 10 in the evening, and there were no buses, and I could either take a taxi or walk. So I walked for like 22 kilometers and in the middle of the night. And then I just decided to like try to hitchhike, and I hitchhiked a car at like 3 a.m. in the morning. So that's how I got to the hitchhiking. Main thing that a lot of people ask me for the start is like what I'm looking to when I'm hitchhiking, and I have like, apart the classic stuff, being interested about other cultures and people and actually traveling, there are like three aspects I'm looking for when I'm hitchhiking. That's like the economical aspect of the country, so I can get to know how the country is structured, because I really like to talk to the locals, and you can see the development level of the country when you visit them at their homes and when you talk to the people. Then the social level of the country, and like, I don't know, religion, culture, and not these superficial things when you just go to the hotel. And also, I like to get the first-hand experience on the political situation. So I have traveled a lot of Middle Eastern countries by hitchhiking, and there it's like really nice to be seen. And for this purpose, I have prepared like three short stories of mine from three different regions, on which you can see basically these aspects of the hitchhiking. I shared like the folder with my photos in the description. There are like four folders, like one for Europe, one for Israel and Palestine, one for my hitchhiking trip from Iran, and one like bonus folder, which I'll get later on. So basically, about the first one, that's Europe. Hitchhiking in the Europe, it's like the easiest thing ever, because we have really good infrastructure and very good roads, so it's super fast. For example, I was studying at university in the Netherlands, and from my town it was around 1,200 kilometers, and I was hitchhiking in one day, because I didn't want to pay for the plane or for the bus. So I always started like 6 a.m. in the morning, and in the evening I was there. But basically, in this folder, I have pictures from my trip from Spain, when I flew to Spain, and then I was hitchhiking back to Czech Republic. And if you open the folder, there are like the basic things you can see there, because yeah, very good roads, and basically the life that you have to go through when you're traveling. Because I travel like super cheap, and I almost never spend more than 10 euros a day, including everything like accommodation, food, and fun. So you always on a hitchhike. Then I have a tent, so a lot of times, as you can see there on the pictures, I sleep in a tent, like next to the gas station or next to the highway. So on the picture number 5, that's literally a highway next to Monaco, where I have a tent, and there's like dozens and dozens of cars every minute. Or number 6, just like some small lake next to the gas station where I camped. Or 7, you can see like the parking lot with all of the trucks. And yeah, also what I really do in Europe and also in the other parts of the world, I combine it with couchsurfing. If you know it, it's like the social site where people have their profiles and they offer to host you at their homes. So I do that a lot, and I couchsurfed in Barcelona. Like literally, I had no accommodation. I wrote the first guy, "Hey, sorry, I have no place to sleep," and he's just like, he didn't even know me, and in 5 minutes he replied, "Yeah, just come over." Then in Andorra, for example, I was hitchhiking with my friend, and in Andorra, I stayed at a place with 15 Argentinians that were living in 3+1 flat, and they were working 24/7. So that means in the night, 7 were sleeping and 7 were working, and in the day, 7 were working and 7 were sleeping there. It's like 24/7, and nobody of them got a European visa. That's why they're in Andorra, and they were there basically illegally, and they were hosting us, and it was like so much fun because only one guy out of this 15 spoke English, and the rest spoke only Spanish. So we, at some point, we were just like drinking together and looking at each other, and nobody spoke the other's language, and we were just like, yeah, smiling at each other and enjoying the time. And these situations we have like all the time. Then, for example, in France, as you could see on the pictures, there was like winter a bit, which we didn't really expect because in Spain it was like 20 degrees and the beach and the sea, while in the Switzerland and France it's like half a meter of snow. And we didn't really want to camp in that because we didn't have good sleeping bags. So, for example, we're standing next to the road, and some woman in France just stopped, and she's just like, "Oh, do you have a place to sleep?" And we're just like, "Yeah, maybe." And she's just like, "Okay, yeah, you can stay at my house." So then she cooked for us, she gave us some wine, we drank together, and so on. So these situations you experience all the time. So you have to not be afraid to get a bit outside of your comfort zone, otherwise you will not survive. And also the funny thing is, as you can see on the pictures 10 and 11, in Europe, there's actually the hitchhiking thing. It's really popular, and there's like website, for example, hitchwiki.org, which advises you how to hitchhike. And there's a lot of these like official hitchhiking spots. So all around Europe, you can just find stickers on some signs that say just like, this is the official hitchhiking spot. So for Europe, I would say it's very easy if you want to start, but it can get quite expensive, which means like these 10, 15 euros a day, because if you're hitchhiking through Switzerland, you can't literally buy anything. In that, and because of that, I much more like hitchhiking in Middle East, which I have done a lot, like in Israel, Palestine, all over, like Iran, in Oman, in the Emirates, in Turkey, and so on. And in the other folder from Israel and Palestine, you can see like the vast difference from Europe, because it gets culturally, socially, economically, and basically everything much more interesting. First of all, it's really cheap, except for Israel, which is the same price as Switzerland, but Palestine is very cheap. And I traveled there mainly because I wanted to understand the conflict of which we all hear in the TV, like these are the bad and these are the good and so on. And it's really interesting because I was staying with Israelis and with Palestinians, and I was driving with both. And as you can see, for example, on the picture 16, there's like the big red sign that says, "This road leads to the area A under the Palestinian Authority. The entrance for Israelis is forbidden, and it's dangerous dangerous to your lives," which is really funny because all of the Israelis were just like, no, Palestine is dangerous, they'll kill you, and it's super bad, and just don't go there. While the Palestinians were just like, no, Israel is super bad, don't go there, they'll kill you. So everybody had like this, I would say, blocked view against the other people, and they didn't even talk to each other. They're just like complaining about each other. So the Palestinians told me they are bad and Israelis told me they are bad. And yeah, from the pictures, you can see how it looks there. And since there was hot and I was traveling with only hand luggage because Ryanair charges you like 30 euros for a flight. So you want to travel uh, as yeah, with least stuff as possible. So I was only carrying my hammock. And since in the south of Israel there's only a desert, I found the only trees at the graveyard. So, for example, I slept at the Israeli graveyard in the middle of the desert. So, if you can see, there's my hammock, some trees, and in the back there are actually graves. It was quite fun. And yeah, the other pictures I have there are from Palestine. The big wall with the graffiti and how the Palestinian cities look like. Then I even happened to attend some demonstrations where like the Palestinians were throwing stuff at Israelis and they were throwing gas grenades at them. So it's really interesting because it helps you also to understand how these people live and the conflict like in detail, because nobody, no, not nobody, nothing is black and white how it's pictured by the media. There's always 1,000,000,000 catches, and it's not like they're good and they're bad. You have to understand it, and you can understand it from like what you read or what you see, but you have to travel there and talk to the people and then create your own opinion. So yeah, this was really interesting for like the social and political aspect. And yeah, for example, what we see in the TV, how it's dangerous. Actually, it's not. It's super safe. And yeah. And the last thing is, I want to show you is my trip from Iran, where basically I took a flight to Dubai. Then from Dubai, I went to Oman. From Oman, I took a boat to Iran. And from the south of Iran, I hitchhiked like 10,000 kilometers back to Czech Republic in 2 months. And that was really fun because I didn't really plan. I almost never plan. And then when I arrived, I realized there's like 52 degrees outside, which was a bit of a problem since you can't really walk more than 1 kilometer in that until you die. So I had to improvise a lot. And yeah, I also slept a lot in the desert and by the road, and I had this nice sunset over the pile of sand, as you can see there. But what really was most striking about these countries, especially about Iran, how the people were kind and nice to me. Because yeah, it's again pictured politically as something so bad, but you just walk on the street and they just like stop you and, oh, have a lunch with us, have a tea with us. And they even hosted me at home. So at picture 7, you can see where I was sleeping. This is like the house where I slept with 8 other people. It's like for 8 family members. This is the house. And the thing on the right in the tent, that's the kitchen. Uh, yeah. Then I continued through the Caucasus. I've visited like the Azerbaijan, Armenia, Georgia, and then back from Turkey. And yeah, it was really funny because they have these Soviet cars from like 50 years ago, and they still use them. So these cars that you can see in the pictures, like 11, 12, and 13, they actually still use them, and they break all the time. So it happened to me the dozens of times. I was just like helping to repair a car from which just like a tire flew off somewhere to the field. And they were not even bothered by that. So they just like stopped someone, they got another tire, they're repairing for like 3 hours, and then just like continued. And also I was a lot staying with the locals. So for example, some families in Armenia. So number 15, that's like a bath. So if you want to clean yourself, you just like can do it here. Uh, so here it's really important thing I want to mention, that there's really a big difference how hitchhiking creates your opinion compared to the normal holiday. Because, for example, in Iran, if you would go there by a normal holiday, you just like go to the hotel, you just visit some sites, then you go for a fancy lunch and buy. But here you just like travel with the locals and you stay at their homes and you see it's something vastly different that the government tries to show you, and that maybe like the government are bad people, but the normal people are just like super cool. And you wouldn't get to this in any other way than hitchhiking and couchsurfing. So this is what brings you the best like first-hand experiences. And aside of these trips, what I was asked to mention about like the difference between the urban and rural areas, I think it depends on the region where are you, because in Europe, for example, it varies a lot. Like in the north, in Scandinavia, difference between the city and the countryside is almost zero. Like if you're in Sweden and Norway, like it's completely the same. If you're in the west, like I don't know, France, Belgium, it starts to be a bit different. But because of the European Union and like the cohesive funds we have, it's still okay because they try to lower the differences. But then you start to notice it when you're more in the south and the east of Europe, where, for example, in my country, the Prague is like really well developed Western metropolitan area, while if you go to the east of the country, it still might look like from the Soviet Union. So the difference can be really vast. And this is especially true for the Middle East because, for example, in Iran, not Iran, okay, Iran and Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan is, I think, the best case because try to look up the pictures of Azerbaijan and first look at Baku, that's the capital. The Baku looks like Dubai, so they have skyscrapers of steel and glass, and it's pretty amazing actually. And there's like 6-way highway into the Baku. And then 30 kilometers after the capital, the highway ends and it turns to the dust road for the rest of the country. And the countryside is like from 60 years back because they invest like zero to the countryside, but they invest everything to the capital. So the capital is like much more modern than the whole of, I don't know, Sweden, and the countryside is like Albania. So it's super, super big difference. So just look pictures of Azerbaijan. It's really fun. Especially the road, how it turns from the big highway into like dust road. So yeah, so I think these differences depend a lot in the region. And also these differences between the town and the countryside, I think much more bigger differences are in the social and the political mindset. Because, for example, in Iran, like in Tehran, people are quite liberal. They don't want to wear scarves, and they are not so fond of the Islam, and they like the Western culture. While in the countryside, they're super religious, and they are all covered, so you see only the eyes, like in the burqa, and they have much more conservative opinions, and they, for example, don't like the Western countries and so on, and they live by the different ways. So I think it's much more to be seen in like the cultural capital, and also basic things like that in the cities that they might speak some English, but in the countryside there's like no way anybody will be talking English. So I think compared to Europe, they are pretty bad in this, but in Europe, the EU does really good work to put the people more together. So the differences are lesser and lesser. And at last, like, what do I think that hitchhiking can offer young people? Uh, Well, definitely it's some personal experience, because if you want to travel, and I think 90% of the people do, but like the common excuse is that, well, I don't have money, I don't have time, I have to work, and blah, 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 blah. Well, you can do that anyway, because I traveled most of my trips with like so few money that some people will be surprised. So, for example, the trip from Iran to Czech Republic took me 2 months, and including a flight ticket, I did that with 400 euros, which flight cost me like 50 one way to Dubai, and then 350. That's, yeah, you count it. It's like 7 to 8 euros a day for every single day. Be like 7. So that's barely that you can buy like food for that. And then you have to figure out other ways how you can survive in that country. But when you, let's say, move out of your comfort zone, it starts to be really fun. As well, you don't have a place for the place to stay, so you just like go around and ask people like, hey, I am not really well funded, can I stay at your place? And for that I can cook you something of my country, some national dish, or I can tell you my stories, or I can practice with you some languages. So it's like cultural exchange. And then it gets really interesting, because you get into like the Iranian or the Palestinian family, and you eat their meal, and for one day they literally behave to you like a member of their family. So it's like first-hand experience that's so valuable on that. And also when you talk to the drivers, because I sometimes feel like I'm like psychologist when I talk to the drivers, because there's like the feeling that when driver picks you up, they will tell you literally everything of their lives, like if their wife is cheating on them and he has no idea what to do with that, or he has some problems and this and this and this. He tells you everything because he knows he'll never see you again. So it's like this really nice short bond of trust. So the interesting people you meet, you will develop more international mindset. So for example, right now here at my home, I don't have a problem like if I meet some like travelers on the street and I'll just like ask them, hey, do you have a place to sleep? They're like, no, okay, it's not my place. Like immediately, I don't even think about it. Then it develops like a bit of your patience, because sometimes you need to wait like 6 hours next to the road and nothing stops. And the courage and creativity, because you have to be creative. So, for example, if you open like the bonus folder, I have like a picture, number 2. When I was studying in the Netherlands, I hitchhiked there with like my 30-kilo heavy backpack. And I bought like a really big Mexican sombrero and like some Hawaiian stuff on me. And I looked really ridiculous. And when I was standing next to the road, everybody stopped me like immediately. So it's also about your creativity. And yeah, that's about it. And for the very last thing, I have like 3 questions that people ask me the most. So first one is that, is hitchhiking safe? To which I would answer, depends on how you behave. Because if you're a single girl, I think it might be difficult, but then you can travel with someone in pair. But for me as a single guy, you always have this like feeling if it feels right or not. And then you just like don't, for example, go to the car. But I have hitchhiked like, I don't know, 500-600 cars and a couple thousand kilometers, and I never had a single bad experience. So I would say, yes, it is safe. Then my most interesting drivers I hitchhiked with, like basically you get everything. So I hitchhiked like with police, with bodyguards, with immigrants that were in the country illegally, with some politicians, with priests, and basically everything. But my most interesting driver was Austrian ambassador to the Czech Republic. So I got picked like in a big black limo with like the Austrian flags on it, and she had a personal driver, and the car was like full of these leather big seats, and she had a minibar, and that was really interesting. And some like at last some, let's say, funny moments from hitchhiking that's in the bonus folder. So for example, at point one, I had an opportunity to hitchhike at 4,000-meter high altitude in Kyrgyzstan. So it's like what you can see in the back. It's like mountains that are 7,500 meters. Tian Shan. That's quite cool. Then number two, I told you. Number three is that I have actually, because of hitchhiking, I have met a president of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So this like a fancy guy, that's the president of Bosnia, because we hitchhiked with like some guy who was ahead of the ruling party, and he was just like, well, I'm going to the rally with the president, do you want to join? I'll arrange you a picture. So we just like came to him and like, hey, we're your big fans from there, and just like, yeah, sure, let's go for a picture. And the last thing is number four, that's the borders in Armenia. There, the bodyguards apparently didn't really want to work too much. So when I was there, they decided it's time for a break. So they closed the borders, and we started heavily drinking together. So they took like a vodka and stuff. And there are just like a couple of people, like 20 or 30 people waiting outside, and they're honking their horns. But we just like got wasted in like 1 hour. And we were so drunk that they were unable to continue working, so they had to close the border because we got drunk together, and they had to call like some other guys to just like took over their shift. It's really fun. And that's all for me. And now if you have any questions.
Thank you a lot. It was really an amazing story. Your experience is really valuable. And I was thinking about when we are working with the youth, especially with youth in rural areas. I think it's all around Europe. We have the same problem when we are arranging them those experience exchange. Sometimes we are sending young people to see something somewhere, and they are not really interested in. They are just passing a good time somewhere and not really having this something that stays, this experience that stays and that influences you for your future and your future works. And I was listening to you, and I thought that this way of hitchhiking is apparent to some anthropological research work you have made. It's amazing because combined with your education, I think it's a great background to work in. I understand that you want to work in international, national level in politics, and I thought that even maybe a project that could give us some funding to young people to hitchhike and give a roadmap for that. Just some rules for a good hitchhiker and some little funding, and say go on, and we wait you back in a month. Maybe it's even more valuable than just experience exchange sometimes, because as you were saying, you need to be creative, you need to adapt on situation, and hitchhiking forces you to meet the local population. You're forced to exchange with them, and you must be open. So it's something that we are struggling with young people in those experience exchange, and I think the hitchhiking could be maybe. I know this down because maybe with a future project, it's something that we could see. Yes. With our European partner organizations, maybe it's something that could be done. And speaking about that, what could be the main struggles for the young people to hitchhike? To make the first step to go on the road and go on. what are the things that we could say them, that we could give them like advices or something? What are the main things that they should know, and what could they yes, how could we not to force them but push them to hitchhike?
Well, I think the biggest why people don't want to hitchhike is the fear, because of the media today. In the media, you see how the world is bad around you, and you have the migrant crisis, and you have that someone murdered someone all the time in the media, and the people, and especially their parents, are really scared. Because, for example, my parents, they didn't want to allow me, and so on. They did anyway. So I think the most important would be to battle this fear. And well, how to push the people? That's a good question. First of all, maybe it can be done by some, like, I don't know, organizing a hitchhiking competition where you make people hitchhike in pairs or in three. Because I understand that starting hitchhiking alone is like a bit scary. But when you might do it with like two people or in three people, I think then it gets quite easy. And it doesn't need to be as wild as this, but I also started easy. That I hitchhiked only like 10 kilometers to the next city first. Then I was hitchhiking only in Europe. That I hitchhiked from big city to a big city, and then I stayed in a hostel. Then again to the big city, and I stayed in a hostel. With time, I, for example, hitchhiked also to smaller cities, and I was camping outside. Or I hitchhiked to the bigger cities, and I stayed with the locals through couchsurfing. So I think this is like a gradual process to which each person has to go individually. But we can easily push it by organizing some competition, maybe even for some prizes. So you can get a funding. Actually, that'd be really fun how we prove the expenses to the European Union later on from hitchhiking, like the receipts and stuff. That could be really fun.
You can't even imagine. I have already a project born in my mind now. Because when you're saying 2 or 3 people together, I thought maybe a Latvian, a Czech guy, and a Slovakian, and we are putting them together and just
exactly
saying, go on.
Exactly. Like
Why not?
You can have an inspiration, because one of these competitions European-wide that's quite popular and probably everybody heard about, it's Red Bull Can You Make It? It's where Red Bull basically organizes hitchhiking competitions that they make teams of 3, and they throw them at random places all around Europe, like, I don't know, Madrid, London, Paris, and so on, and they have to hitchhike to one place. And another cool thing about this, that you do challenges along the road, and the challenges are meant to get you out of your comfort zone. So I once organized a competition, hitchhiking competition in Copenhagen, and we gave people challenges like, I don't know, convince a stranger to let you ride on his back, or take a selfie with a sheep, or ask women for tampons, or a high five 20 people in a row, or teach stranger a dance, these kind of things. And it's really fun. So you can just make some of these international teams. You then, let's say we all start from Riga and we'll be going to Belgium, and you have like some different checkpoints on the way. You can choose where you go. For each checkpoints, you have some amount of points, and the one who is the fastest or has the most points wins.
That's why we have local action groups all around Europe for the checkpoints.
Exactly.
I was wondering if you are staying in touch with people you have met while you're hitchhiking. Do you have a network of people you have met?
With some, like, it's very hard to stay in touch with everybody, because I hitchhiked maybe with like 800 drivers. but I stay in touch with like the really cool ones. For example, in Latvia, I hitchhiked in Latvia 2 months ago, and I met there a Latvian living in Norway, and he was really cool because he like talked. We talked about life, and then he invited me for a lunch in Klaipeda, in like the really big tower. So it's like really fancy place. It's really fun. And then he was just like, "Oh yeah, anytime you're in Norway, just come to my house. I'll host you at my cottage," and so on. So I stay in touch with some people because some people are like really, really, really cool, and some drivers are, for example, they're quiet all the time and they just want to take you and not talk to you. So it depends.
Okay, thank you. Jakob, do you have any questions or remarks?
Oh, for me, for example, the hitchhiking, I tried several times, but I never got any car stopped by me. So then I just, okay.
And how long did you wait?
Sorry?
How long did you wait?
Oh, several hours. Several hours on the street, and nobody stopped me.
Okay.
So then I just thought, okay, that's not the best way of traveling for me. But when I travel a lot through the Europe, including also Africa, I stop almost all the time to people when I see them next to the road and took them somewhere. And very often we have a good conversation together to where you go, what are you doing, this. And when I'm surprised, this happened to me several times, that they know the people, what I know in their country.
Yeah.
They just, once I stopped for 3 Polish guys and I spoke together, blah, blah, blah. And then, in Krakow, I have this friend. Oh, I know him. It's just sometimes amazing. And I have to say that we have to appreciate this change of traveling, which a lot of people don't appreciate because it takes some like automatically. But I think for young people, it's a great opportunity because this can be for them to change their opinion. We do have several hundred students exchange every year through different partners organizations in different European countries, including also Africa. And when I'm very surprised and happy, what makes me keep going, after a few weeks and have some exchange, when I spoke with the people before and after. I never thought, for example, with Romanians, I thought the Romanians, they're only gypsies.
Exactly. These things.
And these things which bring people together, and then they realize, he's the same like me. For example, also in Africa, I work in Kenya with 2 organizations. One is a Christian organization and one is a Muslim organization, and they work together. And I talked with somebody about that because when I went there first time, they're going to kill you there, and they're going to kill you there, blah, 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 because you've seen on television, they killed some Christians on the TV and don't know what. But if you go there, it's absolutely different. And especially with my son, this kind of person, when somebody told me, no, don't go there, it's 2 genders, I just go there.
Yeah.
So I'm very happy to hear your experience about traveling. I just fully agree with that.
I had a similar experience actually because I was teaching English at the Muslim high school in Indonesia, and again, all the people like, Muslims, they just blow up each other and so on, and they're just like little kids, and they're just so cute and so cool.
Yes, exactly.
And about the hitchhiking, actually, it does have some rules. There are not too many, but they exist. So, for example, you can't hitchhike out of the big city, and you always have to take public transportation or walk at the outskirts of the city because you never get a car in the middle of the city. For this, there's like hitchhiking Wikipedia that's called hitchwiki.org, and for most of the cities in the world, it's really cool, they advise you where to go. So, for example, if you're in Bratislava or in Berlin, I don't know where, they tell you, okay, go to this stop, take the bus number 5, go to this place, and there's really big, good bus stop. Usually to hitchhike out of these towns, it's best to find like a bus stops where normal cars can stop, and you have to usually have a sign So I have like a whiteboard that I can erase, and then I write on it again. And then the like basically second rule is traveling between the cities, where on the smaller road you just stand next to the road, but on the highways you obviously can't stand on the highway. So I always have a map, and I find all of the gas stations on the highway, and you travel from one gas station to another. So first you need to get to the gas station, and then you just travel between the gas stations. And you can either stand at the end of the gas station, or you go ask the drivers. And yeah, and basically what I personally have my like golden rule, that if I wait somewhere for half an hour and nobody stops me, you have to do something differently. I mean that either you use a sign, or you don't use a sign, or you move to a different place. But if you stand somewhere for like 2 hours and nothing happens, you're standing at a bad place.
Or you should put a Mexican hat.
Yes.
Hat.
Yeah. Also, there are like, it depends on the country, because for example in Eastern Europe the hitchhiking is really easy. In Scandinavia it's quite hard. But the worst countries for hitchhiking, no matter what you do, but you almost never get a car, is England and Italy. The people are just like dicks.
I will cut out this part.
I know.
I will replace with a beep.
Yeah. No, I mean that they are not the word, but they just don't have the mentality for the hiking. They just don't understand it, these two countries. But if you go, for example, to Ireland, it's just so easy.
Okay, thank you. I think we are running out of time. It was really interesting. I think we could continue for hours.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you a lot preparing this webinar. We will send it out to our partners who were unfortunately not there. I will send them out with a remark that it was really interesting, and that they have lost a lot.
Yeah.
But we will keep in touch, and I will inform you about further activities and European Rural Youth Parliament. Maybe you are interested in to come and share your experience, and so we will see. We stay in touch, and and yes, thank you again, and thank you, Jakob, for joining us. And okay, then have a nice day.
You too. So
Okay,
thanks,
bye.
guys.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye.
See you.
Touch.